In the grand theater of human relationships, most men stumble through their interactions with women like blind actors on an unlit stage. They speak of love, romance, and connection while remaining fundamentally ignorant of the deeper psychological currents that truly govern feminine desire and attraction. This ignorance is not merely inconvenient, it is catastrophic to their success in both romantic and social spheres. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that power dynamics govern all human relationships, and nowhere is this more evident than in the complex dance between masculine and feminine energies. The prince who would rule effectively must understand not only the obvious motivations of his subjects, but their hidden desires, fears, and needs. Similarly, the man who would truly connect with women must penetrate beyond surface-level observations to grasp the 7 fundamental psychological needs that drive feminine behavior. But understanding these needs is only half the equation. Knowledge without personal strength is impotent. The man who recognizes these truths yet remains enslaved to his own weaknesses will find himself unable to leverage this understanding effectively. He will remain reactive, needy, and ultimately unsuccessful in his endeavors. This is why the second principle becomes equally crucial: the complete destruction of one's weak self. The weak self is that collection of insecurities, limiting beliefs, emotional dependencies, and fear-based behaviors that keep a man from actualizing his full potential. It is the voice that whispers of inadequacy, the hand that trembles before taking bold action, the mind that seeks validation from others rather than generating confidence from within. This weak self must be identified, confronted, and systematically destroyed if a man is to become truly unshakable. These two concepts, understanding feminine psychology and destroying personal weakness, are inextricably linked. The man who understands women's hidden needs but approaches them from a position of weakness will find his knowledge useless. Conversely, the man who has conquered his weaknesses but remains ignorant of feminine psychology will project strength into a void, missing the mark entirely. Part 1. The 7 hidden psychological territories of the feminine mind. The first hidden need that governs feminine psychology is the need for emotional security through strength recognition. This goes far beyond the superficial attraction to physical strength or social status. Women possess an almost supernatural ability to detect authentic inner strength versus manufactured confidence. They can sense within moments whether a man's self-assurance stems from genuine self-mastery or from desperate attempts to appear strong while harboring deep insecurities. This recognition system evolved over millennia, when a woman's survival, and that of her offspring, depended entirely on her ability to identify men who could provide protection and stability in an uncertain world. Modern society may have changed the external circumstances, but these deeply embedded psychological patterns remain as powerful as ever. A woman feels safest when she can sense that a man has conquered his own inner demons and achieved genuine emotional stability. The manifestation of this need appears in countless ways throughout interactions. When a woman tests a man's boundaries, challenges his opinions, or creates minor conflicts, she is not being difficult for its own sake. She is unconsciously assessing whether his strength is real or merely a facade that crumbles under pressure. The man who becomes defensive, angry, or seeks to appease her during these tests fails spectacularly. The man who remains centered, confident, and unmoved by her emotional fluctuations demonstrates the kind of unshakable strength that triggers deep attraction and respect. This need for strength recognition explains why women are often attracted to men who seem slightly dangerous or unpredictable, not because they desire actual harm, but because such men demonstrate that they are not controlled by social conditioning or the opinions of others. They have conquered the weak parts of themselves that seek approval and validation. This creates an aura of authentic power that women find irresistible. The second hidden need centers around intellectual stimulation through unpredictability. Women often complain that men become boring or predictable after the initial courtship phase, but they rarely articulate exactly what they mean by this. What they are describing is the death of mental engagement that occurs when a man stops challenging her intellectually and emotionally. Feminine psychology craves complexity and depth. Women are naturally drawn to puzzles, mysteries, and situations that engage their analytical and intuitive faculties simultaneously. A man who presents himself as an open book, whose thoughts and reactions can be predicted with certainty, fails to engage this fundamental aspect of feminine psychology. He becomes mentally inert, like a solved equation that no longer requires attention. The man who understands this need deliberately maintains layers of depth and mystery in his interactions. He shares enough of himself to create connection while maintaining enough ambiguity to sustain intrigue. His opinions are well-formed but not dogmatic. His emotions are accessible but not completely transparent. His plans and goals are clear in direction but flexible in execution. This unpredictability must be authentic, not manufactured through game-playing or deliberate confusion. Women can distinguish between genuine complexity, the natural result of a deep, evolving mind, and artificial mystery created through manipulation. The former creates lasting attraction and respect. The latter generates suspicion and eventual disgust. Most men fall into one of two traps. They either reveal everything about themselves immediately, destroying all mystery, or they attempt to create artificial intrigue through dishonesty or game-playing. Both approaches fail because they do not spring from authentic personal development. The man who naturally maintains appropriate mystery does so because he is genuinely complex, continuously growing, and has interests and pursuits that extend far beyond any single relationship. The third hidden need involves emotional leadership through decisive action. This principle challenges the modern narrative that relationships should be completely egalitarian partnerships where all decisions are made through democratic consensus. While equality in terms of respect and value is essential, the psychological reality is that women often feel most comfortable and secure when men take the lead in making decisions, particularly in moments of uncertainty or stress. This need for emotional leadership manifests most clearly during times of crisis or transition. When faced with difficult decisions or unclear situations, women often look to men to provide direction and certainty. This is not because women are incapable of making decisions, quite the opposite. It is because the feminine psyche finds deep comfort in knowing that someone is willing to take responsibility for outcomes and bear the psychological burden of leadership. The man who constantly defers decisions back to women, who seeks consensus for every minor choice, or who appears paralyzed by options fails to fulfill this psychological need. Such men create anxiety rather than security because they force women to carry the mental load of decision-making in addition to their other concerns. However, this leadership must be exercised with wisdom and consideration. Emotional leadership does not mean making unilateral decisions that affect others without input or consideration. It means being willing to gather information, consider options, make decisions, and take responsibility for outcomes. It means providing direction when direction is needed and certainty when others are uncertain. The man who masters this principle learns to read situations accurately and determine when leadership is needed versus when collaborative decision-making is more appropriate. He develops the confidence to make difficult decisions and the wisdom to make good ones. He takes responsibility for outcomes without becoming paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. The fourth hidden need revolves around protection through competent action. Modern feminism has created confusion around this topic, with many believing that women no longer desire or need protection from men. This misunderstands the nature of the protective instinct and its psychological importance. Protection in the modern context is not primarily physical, though that aspect remains relevant, but encompasses emotional, social, and psychological protection. Women feel most secure with men who demonstrate competence across multiple domains of life. This competence signals an ability to handle whatever challenges might arise and protect both the woman and any potential offspring from various forms of harm or instability. This need manifests as attraction to men who are skilled, capable, and reliable rather than those who are helpless or incompetent. A woman observes how a man handles conflicts with other people, how he manages his finances, how he maintains his living space, how he treats service workers, and how he responds to unexpected challenges. Each of these observations contributes to her assessment of his protective capabilities. The man who demonstrates competence and capability across these domains triggers deep feelings of security and attraction. This protection instinct also manifests in social situations. Women feel most comfortable with men who can navigate social dynamics skillfully, who can defend them against social aggression or manipulation, and who can enhance their social status rather than diminishing it. The man who becomes tongue-tied in social situations, who allows others to disrespect his woman, or who creates social embarrassment through his behavior, fails to fulfill this protective need. The competence that women find attractive is not specialized expertise in a single area, but general life competence, the ability to learn new skills, solve problems, and handle responsibilities effectively. This creates confidence that whatever challenges life might present, he will be able to meet them successfully. The fifth hidden need centers on validation through selective attention. This principle appears contradictory to many men who believe that showing constant attention and validation will increase attraction. In reality, attention and validation only have value when they come from someone who has other options and chooses to focus on one particular woman. Women understand intuitively that attention from a man who has no other choices is worthless as a form of validation. It is given not because of her unique value, but because of his lack of alternatives. This type of attention actually decreases attraction because it signals low social value and desperate neediness. Conversely, attention from a man who clearly has options but chooses to focus on her specifically creates powerful feelings of specialness and validation. This selective attention must be earned rather than given freely to all women. It becomes valuable precisely because it is scarce and discriminating. This need explains why women often lose interest in men who become too available too quickly. The man who cancels all other plans, who is always free when she wants to meet, and who makes her his sole focus, inadvertently signals that he has no other valuable pursuits or relationships. This creates doubt about his overall value and attractiveness. The man who understands this principle maintains his own interests, relationships, and pursuits while showing genuine interest in worthy women. His attention becomes a reward for positive behavior rather than an expectation that is given regardless of how she treats him. This creates a dynamic where his attention maintains its value and power throughout the relationship. The sixth hidden need involves growth through constructive challenge. Women often complain about men who agree with everything they say or who never challenge their ideas, opinions, or behaviors. While they may say they want unconditional acceptance, their behavior reveals a different truth. They are attracted to men who push them to grow and improve. This challenging must come from a place of genuine care rather than criticism or control. The man who challenges a woman's limiting beliefs, who encourages her to pursue her goals more aggressively, or who refuses to enable her negative behaviors demonstrates that he values her potential more than her current comfort. This type of challenge creates respect and attraction because it signals that he sees greatness in her and is willing to risk conflict to help her achieve it. Many men fall into the trap of believing that they should agree with everything a woman says or avoid any form of disagreement. This approach actually diminishes attraction because it signals either dishonesty, the man clearly cannot agree with everything if he has his own well-formed opinions, or weakness, he has no strong convictions of his own and simply adopts whatever opinions he thinks will be most acceptable. The man who masters constructive challenge learns to distinguish between important principles worth defending and trivial preferences that do not matter. He develops the skill to disagree respectfully while maintaining emotional connection. He learns to challenge behaviors and ideas without attacking the person's character or worth. This challenging must be balanced with support and encouragement. The man who only criticizes or challenges without also providing emotional support and recognition of positive qualities will create resentment rather than growth. The goal is to create an environment where she feels both challenged to improve and supported in her efforts. The seventh and final hidden need encompasses adventure through expanded possibilities. Women are naturally drawn to men who expand their world rather than constraining it. This manifests as attraction to men who introduce new experiences, perspectives, and opportunities for growth and adventure. The man who brings excitement, novelty, and expanded possibilities into a woman's life fulfills a deep psychological need for growth and exploration. This does not necessarily require expensive trips or extreme activities, though those can be effective, but rather a mindset of curiosity, exploration, and continuous learning that makes life more interesting and engaging. Women feel most alive with men who are themselves alive with curiosity and ambition. These men see possibilities where others see limitations. They approach life as an adventure to be explored rather than a series of obligations to be endured. This energy is infectious and creates an environment where women feel inspired to explore their own potential and possibilities. The man who fulfills this need consistently introduces new ideas, experiences, and perspectives into the relationship. He maintains his own growth and development, which naturally brings fresh energy and insights into their shared experience. He approaches challenges as opportunities for growth, rather than threats to be avoided. This adventurous spirit must be authentic rather than manufactured. Women can distinguish between genuine curiosity and enthusiasm versus forced attempts to appear interesting or exciting. The man who naturally approaches life with wonder and ambition will automatically fulfill this need without conscious effort. Part 2. The systematic destruction of the weak self-understanding. The 7 hidden needs of feminine psychology provides a roadmap for connection and attraction, but this knowledge remains impotent without the personal strength to implement it effectively. The weak self, that collection of fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs that constrains a man's potential, must be identified and systematically destroyed before these insights can be leveraged successfully. The weak self manifests in countless ways throughout daily life, but its most destructive expressions revolve around the need for external validation. The man controlled by his weak self constantly seeks approval from others, particularly from women, and modifies his behavior based on the reactions he receives. This need for validation creates a reactive rather than proactive approach to life, where decisions are made based on what others will think, rather than what serves his authentic goals and values. This validation-seeking behavior is immediately detectable by women and creates the opposite of attraction. When a man's actions, words, and decisions are obviously motivated by a desire to gain approval, he signals that his sense of self-worth depends on external sources rather than internal strength. This dependency creates anxiety in others because they sense that he will become resentful or unstable if his need for validation is not consistently met. The destruction of this pattern begins with radical honesty about one's motivations. Before taking any action or making any decision, the man committed to destroying his weak self must ask himself whether his choice is motivated by authentic self-expression or by a desire to gain approval from others. This self-examination must be ruthless and ongoing, because the need for validation expresses itself in subtle ways that are easy to rationalize or ignore. The weak self also manifests through emotional reactivity, the tendency to be controlled by circumstances rather than maintaining emotional stability regardless of external conditions. The reactive man's mood, confidence, and behavior fluctuate dramatically based on how others treat him, what happens in his environment, and whether his immediate desires are satisfied. This reactivity makes him unpredictable in the worst possible way, not because he is complex and interesting, but because he is controlled by forces outside himself. Women find emotional reactivity deeply unattractive because it signals that the man cannot be relied upon to provide stability during difficult times. If his emotional state is controlled by external circumstances, how can he be trusted to provide leadership when those circumstances become challenging? The reactive man becomes an additional source of stress rather than a source of strength and security. Destroying emotional reactivity requires developing what Stoic philosophers called the discipline of desire, the ability to maintain emotional equilibrium regardless of whether one's immediate desires are satisfied. This involves training oneself to find satisfaction in the process of pursuing goals rather than in achieving specific outcomes, and to maintain confidence and stability even when facing rejection, criticism, or temporary setbacks. The practice of emotional non-reactivity must be developed gradually through conscious effort in increasingly challenging situations. It begins with small annoyances, traffic jams, rude service workers, minor inconveniences, and progresses to more significant challenges like professional setbacks, social rejection, and relationship conflicts. The goal is not to become emotionally numb, but to maintain the ability to choose one's emotional responses rather than being controlled by them. Another critical manifestation of the weak self involves the fear of conflict and confrontation. Many men have been conditioned to believe that avoiding conflict is virtuous and that confrontation is inherently negative. This conditioning creates men who are unable to establish boundaries, defend their values, or stand up for themselves and others when necessary. Such men become doormats who are walked over by more assertive individuals. The fear of conflict stems from several weak self-patterns: the need for approval, the fear of being disliked, and the mistaken belief that avoiding confrontation will lead to better outcomes. In reality, the man who cannot engage in healthy conflict when necessary will find himself constantly compromising his values, accepting poor treatment, and failing to achieve his goals. Destroying the fear of conflict requires understanding that confrontation, when approached skillfully, often leads to better relationships and outcomes than avoidance. Most people respect individuals who are willing to stand up for their principles, even when they disagree with those principles. The key is learning to engage in conflict without becoming emotional, personal, or vindictive. This skill develops through practice in low-stakes situations and gradually progresses to more significant confrontations. The man learning to destroy his conflict-avoidant patterns might begin by politely but firmly correcting a server who brought the wrong order, progress to addressing inappropriate behavior from friends or colleagues, and eventually develop the confidence to have difficult but necessary conversations in intimate relationships. The weak self also expresses itself through what can be called the scarcity mindset. The unconscious belief that opportunities, resources, and positive experiences are limited and must be hoarded or desperately pursued. This mindset creates neediness, jealousy, and a tendency to cling to people and opportunities rather than approaching them with abundance and confidence. Men operating from scarcity become possessive in relationships, jealous of other men, and desperate to lock down any woman who shows interest. This desperation is immediately detectable and deeply unattractive because it signals that the man does not believe he can attract other high-quality women. His behavior communicates that his current option might be his last, creating pressure and anxiety rather than comfort and security. Destroying the scarcity mindset requires developing genuine abundance in multiple areas of life. This is not about pretending to have options when none exist, but about actively creating a life rich with possibilities, relationships, and opportunities. The man with genuine abundance has multiple sources of fulfillment and therefore does not become desperate or clingy about any single person or opportunity. Creating this abundance requires sustained effort in self-development, skill building, and relationship building across multiple domains. The man might develop his professional skills to create career opportunities, build a diverse social network to ensure multiple friendship options, pursue various interests to create fulfillment beyond romantic relationships, and maintain his physical health and appearance to enhance his attractiveness to potential partners. Perhaps the most insidious manifestation of the weak self involves the tendency towards self-deception and rationalization. Rather than facing uncomfortable truths about their behavior, motivations, or circumstances, weak men create elaborate stories that protect their ego while preventing growth and improvement. They blame external circumstances for their failures, rationalize their fears as wisdom, and convince themselves that their limitations are actually virtues. This self-deception prevents the honest self-assessment necessary for improvement. The man who cannot accurately identify his weaknesses will never be able to address them effectively. He will continue making the same mistakes while believing that external factors are responsible for his repeated failures. Destroying self-deception requires committing to radical honesty in self-assessment. This means acknowledging uncomfortable truths about one's behavior, admitting mistakes and failures, and taking responsibility for outcomes rather than blaming circumstances. It means seeking feedback from trusted friends and mentors, even when that feedback is difficult to hear. The practice of radical honesty must extend beyond self-assessment to include honest communication with others. The man committed to destroying his weak self stops telling people what he thinks they want to hear and begins expressing his authentic thoughts and feelings. This honesty will sometimes create conflict or disappointment, but it will also create deeper connections with people who appreciate authenticity. The weak self's final major manifestation involves the addiction to comfort and the avoidance of difficulty. Modern society encourages men to seek ease, convenience, and immediate gratification while avoiding discomfort, challenge, and delayed gratification. This conditioning creates men who are soft, weak, and unprepared for the inevitable difficulties that life presents. The comfort-addicted man avoids challenging conversations, difficult decisions, physical discomfort, and situations where he might fail or be rejected. This avoidance keeps him trapped in mediocrity because all growth and achievement require moving through discomfort and uncertainty. He becomes predictable, boring, and ultimately unsuccessful because he is unwilling to pay the price that success demands. Destroying comfort addiction requires deliberately seeking out challenging situations and learning to find satisfaction in overcoming difficulty rather than avoiding it. This might involve pursuing physical challenges like martial arts or endurance sports, professional challenges like starting a business or pursuing a difficult promotion, or social challenges like approaching attractive women or speaking publicly. The key is to gradually expand one's comfort zone rather than attempting dramatic changes that are likely to fail. The man might begin with small physical challenges like cold showers or early morning workouts, progress to moderate social challenges like initiating conversations with strangers, and eventually tackle major life challenges like career changes or entrepreneurial ventures. Each successfully navigated challenge builds confidence and resilience while reducing the power of comfort addiction. The man learns that discomfort is temporary and survivable, while the satisfaction of overcoming challenges is lasting and empowering. This creates a positive feedback loop where he begins seeking out challenges rather than avoiding them. Part 3. The integration of understanding and strength. The man who has gained deep understanding of feminine psychology while simultaneously destroying his weak self patterns finds himself in a position of tremendous power and effectiveness. He no longer approaches women from a position of neediness or desperation, but from genuine strength and abundance. This transformation affects every aspect of his interactions and relationships, creating outcomes that seemed impossible during his weaker phases. His understanding of women's need for emotional security through strength recognition now flows naturally from his authentic inner strength rather than from manufactured confidence or performance. He does not need to pretend to be strong because he has done the difficult work of actually becoming strong. His confidence is unshakable because it is based on genuine self-mastery rather than external validation or temporary successes. This authentic strength manifests in his body language, his voice tone, his decision-making patterns, and his reactions to various situations. Women immediately sense the difference between this genuine strength and the desperate attempts at appearing strong that characterize weaker men. He passes their unconscious tests effortlessly because he truly is unmoved by their emotional fluctuations or challenging behaviors. When faced with a woman who is being difficult, testing his boundaries or creating conflict, he does not become defensive, angry, or eager to appease. Instead, he remains centered and calm, addressing the situation from a position of strength rather than reactivity. This response often immediately diffuses the conflict while simultaneously increasing her attraction and respect. His approach to providing intellectual stimulation through unpredictability becomes effortless because he has developed genuine depth and complexity through his self-development journey. He no longer needs to manufacture mystery or play games to maintain interest because his authentic growth and evolution create natural intrigue. His opinions are well-formed but not rigid, his emotions are accessible but not overwhelming, and his future plans are clear but not completely predictable. He shares aspects of himself strategically, revealing enough to create connection while maintaining enough privacy to sustain curiosity. This balance occurs naturally rather than through calculated manipulation because he has developed appropriate boundaries and understands the value of both intimacy and independence. Women find themselves continuously discovering new facets of his personality and character, which maintains their interest and engagement over time. The emotional leadership that women crave flows naturally from his developed decision-making abilities and his willingness to take responsibility for outcomes. Having destroyed his weak self's need for consensus and approval, he can make difficult decisions quickly and confidently when leadership is required. He gathers appropriate input and considers various perspectives, but he does not become paralyzed by options or defer all decisions back to others. This leadership extends beyond major life decisions to encompass the daily choices that shape the quality of shared experiences. He chooses restaurants, plans activities, and makes travel arrangements without constantly seeking approval or deferring to others. This decisiveness creates a sense of security and allows others to relax and enjoy experiences rather than bearing the mental burden of constant decision-making. However, his leadership is tempered by wisdom and consideration. Having developed emotional intelligence alongside strength, he understands when collaborative decision-making is more appropriate than unilateral leadership. He can distinguish between situations that require firm direction and those that benefit from democratic input. This flexibility makes his leadership even more effective because it is applied appropriately rather than rigidly. His ability to provide protection through competent action becomes a natural extension of his broader life competence. Having committed to destroying his weak self, he has necessarily developed skills, capabilities, and resources across multiple domains. He can handle social situations skillfully, manage his finances responsibly, maintain his living environment effectively, and navigate conflicts successfully. This competence is not limited to traditionally masculine domains, but extends to emotional intelligence, communication skills, and relationship management. He can provide both physical and psychological protection because he has developed the tools and capabilities necessary to handle various types of challenges and threats. Women feel safe with him not only because he can handle practical problems, but because he creates an environment of emotional security through his stability and reliability. His competence extends to understanding and managing his own emotions, which means he can remain calm and effective during crises when others might become overwhelmed or reactive. His validation through selective attention becomes powerful precisely because he has developed genuine options and alternatives. Having worked on himself comprehensively, he naturally becomes more attractive to women, which creates legitimate choices rather than manufactured scarcity. His attention and interest become valuable because they could be directed elsewhere, but are specifically chosen to focus on worthy individuals. This selectivity is not cruel or manipulative, but represents healthy discernment and appropriate standards. He values his time and energy too highly to waste them on people who did not reciprocate interest or treat him with respect. This creates a dynamic where his attention becomes a reward for positive behavior rather than something that is given regardless of how he is treated. The contrast between his selective attention and the desperate availability of weaker men becomes immediately apparent to women. They recognize that his interest represents genuine choice rather than lack of alternatives, which makes them feel special and valued when they receive his focus and attention. His ability to provide growth through constructive challenge becomes particularly effective because he approaches it from a foundation of strength and genuine care rather than insecurity or control. Having faced his own limitations and worked to overcome them, he can help others identify and address their own obstacles to growth without judgment or condescension. His challenging comes from a place of recognizing potential rather than criticizing current limitations. He sees what women could become and is willing to risk temporary discomfort to help them achieve their goals. This type of support is rare and valuable because most people either avoid challenging others to prevent conflict or challenge destructively through criticism and judgment. The balance between challenge and support becomes natural because he has learned to manage his own emotions and reactions effectively. He can remain caring and connected while still holding high standards and expectations. This creates an environment where women feel both pushed to improve and supported in their efforts. His provision of adventure through expanded possibilities becomes effortless because his own life has become genuinely interesting and dynamic. Having destroyed his weak self's addiction to comfort and routine, he naturally seeks out new experiences, challenges, and opportunities for growth. This energy and enthusiasm for life becomes infectious and attractive to others. He approaches life as an adventure to be explored rather than a series of obligations to be endured. This perspective creates opportunities for shared growth and excitement that make relationships more engaging and fulfilling. Women feel more alive and inspired in his presence because he embodies the kind of energy and possibility that they want to experience in their own lives. The adventures he provides are not necessarily expensive or elaborate, but represent genuine novelty and growth opportunities. He might introduce new perspectives through books and conversations, new experiences through travel and activities, or new possibilities through his own ambitious projects and goals. The integration of understanding and strength creates a man who is genuinely attractive and effective in his relationships with women. He no longer needs to rely on manipulation, games, or artificial strategies because his authentic development makes him naturally appealing. His interactions become effortless because he is responding from genuine strength rather than compensating for weakness. This transformation extends far beyond romantic relationships to affect all areas of life. His professional relationships improve because he can provide leadership and handle conflicts effectively. His friendships deepen because he can offer genuine value through his strength and capabilities. His family relationships become more harmonious because he can maintain appropriate boundaries while still providing support and care. The man who achieves this integration finds that success in various domains becomes more natural and sustainable. He no longer exhausts himself trying to maintain false personas or compensating for weaknesses. Instead, he can focus his energy on continued growth and the achievement of meaningful goals. Perhaps most importantly, this transformation creates a positive feedback loop that continues to generate improvement over time. His success in relationships provides evidence of his growth, which increases his confidence and motivation to continue developing. His expanded capabilities create new opportunities which provide further chances for growth and achievement. The journey from weakness to strength, from ignorance to understanding, represents one of the most profound transformations a man can undergo. It requires sustained effort, uncomfortable honesty, and the willingness to face and overcome deeply ingrained patterns of thought and behavior. However, the rewards extend far beyond improved relationships with women to encompass a fundamentally more effective and satisfying approach to life itself. The man who completes this transformation becomes truly undestroyable by others because he has already faced and conquered his greatest enemy, his own weak self. External challenges and setbacks become manageable because he has developed the internal strength and capabilities necessary to handle whatever life presents. He no longer fears rejection, criticism, or failure because he has learned to maintain his center regardless of external circumstances. This unshakable foundation allows him to take calculated risks, pursue ambitious goals, and maintain authentic relationships without the fear and desperation that characterize weaker men. He becomes a source of strength and inspiration for others while maintaining the discernment and boundaries necessary to protect his own well-being and continued growth. The principles outlined in this analysis represent timeless truths about human psychology and personal development that remain relevant regardless of changing social conditions or cultural trends. The man who masters these concepts and implements them consistently will find himself equipped to navigate the complexities of modern relationships while building a life of genuine strength, purpose, and fulfillment. The path is difficult and requires sustained commitment, but the alternative, remaining trapped in patterns of weakness and ignorance, leads only to frustration, mediocrity, and missed opportunities. The choice between strength and weakness, understanding and ignorance, effectiveness and failure, ultimately rests with each individual man who must decide what kind of life he wishes to create for himself.